What's up, class? This is Simo. Big up. I know that everybody's inside due to coronavirus, so I just wanted to let you guys know that what I plan to do is to just kind of do these videos, which would kind of serve as a replacement for how we would do class discussions and things like that. How I plan to do this is I plan to just read through some chapter summaries, which actually can be found online. If you don't have the book, please ensure you read the book. Sorry, if you don't have the book, ensure you get the book. If you have the book, please read it. Today, I will actually read through the summaries of chapter 1 and 2. In the last Edmodo sessions that we had, I kind of brought up chapter 1 for Father Son Johnson. So I kind of just want to move forward and discuss chapter 2. So how I'll be doing it is I'll read quick summaries and then I'm going to take 3 or 4 quotations from the book, read the quotes, and kind of just go over the discussion of those quotes. Like give my opinions on it, talk about it a little bit. And then in the comments, I would love it if you guys could write some responses, comment on the actual chapter itself and the quotes, and then we'll move on from there. Alright? Don't worry about the scruffy look, the barber shop them lock due to corona, but it is what it is. So let's go straight into it. For Father Samson Johnson, first of all, My Father Samson Johnson is by C. Everett Palmer. It's a very interesting story that talks about just the journey of the life of someone and how they have to deal with the consequences of their mistakes. And it speaks about a son having to deal with his father and the family life and how family relationship has been broken up and how he has to then deal with that. Chapter 1 summary goes as follows. This chapter introduces the protagonist, Son, and the antagonist, Jake. Protagonist is usually like the hero or the main person in the story. Antagonist is usually the villain. And antagonist, Jake. We learn that Son's wife had divorced him a year and a half ago, and 2 of his children, Brad and Arlene, stayed with their mother, while Rami, the narrator, decided to stay with his father. The story opens with Jake accosting Son at Robin Hill for money that was owed to him. Son gives him Robin Hill's title as payment, and the chapter ends with Son and Rami leaving for River Bottom with their mare, Marble, and their belongings on a cart. So what we kind of have is the fall. Fall from grace is what you might have it. Now, obviously that's very literal as well, because Robin Hill is a house on the hill. And when we talk about class and status, you find that people who normally have house on the hill is usually a higher class, and then the idea is that the hill will look down on the flats for the people who are in the lower class. And this is a fall from grace literally, as you see Son is leaving from Robin Hill all the way down to, where's the next property? River Bottom. You understand? And the thing about that now is that when they move down to that level, it shows how they have dropped in class due to Son's debt and what Son may have done. We'll also look on certain status falling, because if you read chapter 1, you notice that Jake drives a brand new Jaguar. He has a fancy car. And what is Son now relegated to? A mare, a horse, and a cart. So we'll find that right out in the first chapter, Son Johnson is talking about class, family life, social status, and things like that. Now let me go into the summary for chapter 2. In chapter 2, Son and Rami worked feverishly to get River Bottom organized and habitable. It took them 2 weeks to accomplish this task. This shows that where they moved down to, not only is it a lower class, but you find that they had to do a lot to kind of build up their living situation because it wasn't tended to properly. Okay. To accomplish this task. This chapter highlights a difference in the way the children were treated. Arlene and Brad were treated tenderly, treated well, while Rami was ridiculed by his peers, so peer pressure comes into play. All because he decided to stay with his father. A comparison of Jake and Son's lives was also a focus of this chapter, highlighting Jake's thriftiness and Son's extravagance and excessive kindness. Ma constantly harped at Sun Sun to be more prudent, but was ignored. The reader also learned that Jake acquired his initial wealth by conning Sun Sun, thereby gaining the nickname the Rake by Ma. This fact contributed to Rami's surprise at finding Jake relaxing in Sun Sun's favorite chair at Ma's house, and Rami reports this to Sun Sun. So, what we find also is happening now. Not only is there this power struggle and this gulf in class, but it's affecting Rami's social life. How the kids treat him at school, and how his family even sees him. And we notice that Jake is not only taking possessions, but it feels like he's taking the pride away. It feels like he's taking away something personal from Sunton himself. You know, he's taken away something emotional from him. His things, and now his ex-wife, and technically his family. Now, a few quotes that I wanted to kind of go over. First thing, just like we did with Young Warriors, we looked on chapter titles, right? And we'll find that in these chapters, there are certain titles that lead to certain things. Chapter 2 is called Reflections. We spoke about, well, not spoke about, but if you look on chapter 1 is called The Blow. And with that title, we kind of see that we're talking about blow as in a hit. You know, Sun Sun is about to take a really big hit in his life. And we get deeper into that. Now, Reflections. The first quote I want to read says a lot about what Rami is going through. On the first day I rode Marble to school, and all on the first day I rode Marble to school, and although I thought what a good thing it was for me to be the only boy in that school to arrive on a horse, I found it was not so at all. Sure, I was the only one, but that made me odd instead of being important. At another time, a boy would have been cheered to have ridden a horse into the schoolyard. His cronies would have gathered around to touch the animal, to speak to it, and ask questions of its rider. But now, since it was Rami Johnson in the shadow of his father's failure, I was jeered. They gathered around all right, but it was to laugh. A boy in my village never rode on a saddle. He rode bareback, but they laughed at that too. Now, what we'll find is that not only we're talking about status in terms of where he lived and where he moved, but the status is kind of also affecting his social life. Peers are laughing after him. He thought that this would be something that would make him stand out and make him unique, but what it's actually doing is making him seem weird. And that is how it's affecting his social life. Now, he also mentions that this could be something cool. You know, being weird can be cool, but not when it's coming off of his father's failure. And we'll find that we're now looking at the society itself and how society views this failure as something to kind of, people want to keep it away from them. You know, the peer pressure also makes Rami feel bad. It makes Rami want his father to have more ambition, I guess, want his father to do better. Another quote, we'll move on. Our former house at Robin Hill was a palace to his, and was better furnished as well. This must have been one of the wee reasons why father had failed, because he spent so much on things to make us happy, things which other people did not care much about. Father had always cared about us, too much in fact. Whenever he returned from town, he brought us new clothes for extended happiness, and candy for a temporary one. And for Ma, it was a big kiss and something nicely wrapped in a box, the personal one, and something else for the house, but something which she had always wanted. That was how father lived, but father was more lavish than that. His generosity extended beyond our walls. At one time, he was the village's big shot. Then he possessed most of the best lands and the finest cows and mules, and he alone was capable of loading 4 trucks full of bananas on Banana Day. And he had yams, which he could sell 5 tons at a time, and sugarcane as well. Now, a question that I would want you guys, and you guys can write it in the comment section, respond to this question is, Why is it that Sun Sun's kindness is seen as a negative? Something that should be good turns out to be something negative. Why is that? And my response to the quotation would be that Sun Sun seems to be irresponsible. As nice as he seems to be irresponsible. And then the contrast that we're going to see further down is how Jake is seen as a responsible person, or somebody who is more organized. And that organization is one way to look at it in comparison to Jake's lack of organization. And not Jake's, Sun Sun's lack of organization. And then you find now that Jake seems to be meaner and tougher. And the question is, how do we now contrast the two versions, right? One is a father that seems to be very loving, and one wants to be a father to this family, and he shows it with money and wealth. How do we see both? Let's move on to the last quotation of the day. Alas, there were men on the payroll who were in other places, and father didn't know that what his supervisors were up to. When he began to realize his loss of a grip on things, he began to gamble, to lose it fast, and to borrow again. No man gets more desperate than a gambler who loses because he's always trying to win his losses back, but only adding to them, and he forsakes his duties. What we'll find here is that Jake is now, not Jake, sorry, keep mixing up the names. Sun Sun is now being seen as irresponsible, mostly because he's not in control of his addictions. And that is something that we're going to have to look on throughout the chapter too. How detrimental has Sun Sun's addictions and habits been to his overall family? And can that be fixed? And what is Rami learning from this? This is something that I would love to even compare to modern day life and even Jamaican modern day life. There are so many things that people can be addicted to. Nowadays, we find that we're very impressed by people's cars, we're impressed by people's clothes, we're impressed by the phones that people have, right? How addicted are we to the types of phones that we have, the clothes that we wear? You understand? The swag that we have, the type of school bag, the type of shoes. You understand? How quick are we to maybe judge somebody for the type of shoes that they have on? And how can that affect somebody mentally? In My Father, Son, Son Johnson, we're going to encounter a lot of that. We're going to encounter a lot of social status, and we have to look on the norm of society. What is normal? What is accepted? Right? Another thing we have to look at is ambition. What do the characters want to achieve, and how do they go about achieving it? And that's where we kind of look on who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist and things like that, and the choices that Rami then has to make. All right. We're going to be doing more of these videos. For the next video, which will be on Monday, right? I plan to look into characters, and we're going to stay with chapter 1 and 2. So we're going to look at characters within chapters 1 and 2. And then Wednesday's class, I'm going to look into themes in chapters 1 and 2, and then you're going to get a quiz. So keep up with these. Please read the chapters, and the questions that I posed today, please discuss them in the comment section, and let's get the discussion going for the class. Bless you.